Now you're welcome, Max. So our Olympic coverage is with thanks to Indeed, who are proud to support Team Ireland at the Tokyo Games. Indeed believes the world works better when people are given every opportunity to unleash their true talents. Hashtag Talent Unleashed. And I'm very happy to say we are joined by Tara Sullivan of the Boston Globe. Tara, great to have you on.
Thank you for having me. How you doing?
Yeah, very well. So you're enjoying the Olympics, I presume. I know it's big business over there. NBC pay a couple of trillion to get the rights, so USA goes Olympics mad.
It does indeed, and it's all different this year. It all feels very different, obviously, with the delay and the COVID and the pandemic. But, you know, when you come down to it and the athletes are performing, that part will always draw me in, whether it's a streaming service, Peacock, that's driving people nuts over here because you have to pay to see the certain service just to see the basketball games. But there's plenty on across the board, and I find myself immersed in all of it.
Well, it must be so nice for you. I mean, you only have the 24 medals so far, 9 gold. I mean, you really do stick by your guys, you know, win, lose or draw.
That is true, although I'm sure you can find plenty of people to complain about some of the unexpected not gold medals or a team loss in basketball and those sorts of things. But, yeah, we could be a tough crowd over here.
I'll bet. So we should start by talking about the Simone Biles story, which has really grabbed the attention of the world's media. You know, I was making the point earlier to one of our guests that we're quite parochial in how we consume the Olympics. Lots of us, it's very much our own country, and then we see what the big international stories are. Now, Simone Biles was one of the big international stories in advance of the Games. She was looking to make history and win the most gold medals of any female Olympian ever. That chance is now gone. She has withdrawn this morning. She withdrew from the women's team final, and it seems it's in doubt as to whether she will compete across these Games. She would be due out again on Thursday. Maybe fill us in on your understanding of what's happening here with Simone Biles.
Yeah, well, I don't have all the answers either, and it's obviously an ongoing and developing story. And as you can imagine, you know, an enormous headline-grabbing one here in the U.S. because, like you said, even from the perspective here of that many competitors and athletes as the U.S. does have, this really did feel like the Simone Biles Olympics. I think gymnastics has always been such a marquee sport of the Summer Olympics. The U.S. hadn't lost a team competition in over a decade. Such a dominant group, and this team might have been the most favored of all of them. So for what we saw happen this morning has just been one of those kind of whiplash moments, and people are talking about it and what happened. And the answer so far from Biles herself is that she just mentally found herself not prepared, not able to do it. They didn't have a great prelim round, finished behind the athletes from Russia, and on her first vault this morning, she kind of lost her place in midair. Scored very low, and from that point forward, you know, she ended up withdrawing and just said later, mentally, I wasn't there. And I think in gymnastics, a sport where, you know, you're hurling your body through the air and into these apparatus, that, you know, the risk of injury is enormous if your head's not in it. And I think she recognized that. So initially, it was an unspecified medical issue, and then there was a statement by Team USA which gave very little away. They just said she's withdrawn and she'll be assessed daily to determine medical clearance for future competitions. And then Biles came out herself and spoke to the media. We have a short clip here. The audio quality isn't brilliant, but it's all we have at the moment. So this is Simone Biles in the mix zone with a silver medal. Russia ultimately beat her American team. She was cheering on from the sidelines, and she was asked about her participation in the Games and what was wrong in effect and why she was stepping out for the time being.
To focus on my well-being, and you know, there's more to life than just gymnastics, and it is very unfortunate that it has to happen at this stage, because I definitely wanted this Olympics to go a little bit better. But again, take it one day at a time. We're going to see how the rest goes.
So she's been talking a bit more since, Tara, and so what she says is, I've never felt like this going into competition before, and I stepped away this morning because I needed to let the girls do it and just focus on myself. And then further to your point about the dangers if you're not feeling 100%, she says, at the end of the day, we want to walk out of here, not to be dragged out of here in a stretcher. I just don't trust myself as much as I used to, and I don't know if it's age. I'm a little more nervous when I do gymnastics. I feel like I'm also not having as much fun, and I know that. So really interesting comments, like almost somebody who's lost their nerve a touch and she's wondering herself if it's age or if it's something else. But there are certain sports where if you lose your nerve or your confidence, you just literally can't perform.
Yeah, I mean, we see it, in American baseball, you can no longer throw the ball, right? You just can't like move the ball forward. And even in that, then there's not the risk of injury that you have in gymnastics. The comments are, they're shocking. I mean, I don't know what words to use. Like, I think we have to stop and take notice of what it is she's saying, because it's a very rare instance where you hear an athlete at her level, literally considered the best ever in this sport, and who has pushed it to all these new heights with her tricks and difficulty levels, to say that out loud. I lost my confidence. I couldn't do it. I can't, she would hurt the team more by competing than by, then she could help them by competing, and she might hurt herself even more above. So I just think it's something where we all need to stop and talk about it, which is what we're doing here, and not as simple just, oh my God, I can't believe she walked out on her team, which I do think is one of the elements that some people is their initial reaction. I think there's a much bigger issue here at play, which is this acknowledgement of a mental health injury, if you will, being just as debilitating as a physical injury would have been.
Yes. And so, because when initially there were rumors of mental health issues, I think, and it's such a catch-all term, we can all make the mistake of thinking some kind of depression, but you listen to her speak there and she seems in reasonably high spirits. And I know, again, lots of people who are maybe suffering with depression can sound like they're in a really good place. So I want to be careful here and respectful to anyone, but it seemed like she was in an okay place. And the way she's talking, this mental health issue does really seem to be about nerve and about confidence and about some kind of anxiety, because I was reading, and I'm not a gymnastics expert, but she attempted her trusty Aminar vault, a move on it, and this is one that, she almost never misses. This is kind of just routine for someone of her abilities, and yet she launched herself into the air. Her form deteriorated and she only managed 1.5 twists before a messy landing. The judge gave her an extremely low score. So it's not even a case of the moves she's striving for proving beyond reach. It's like the routine humdrum things that she can do normally are even failing her at the moment.
That's sure what it seemed like today. And again, we're all treading carefully, because we certainly don't want to speak for her or in, like you're saying, in terms of where she is at in totality mentally. But as it related to that Olympic performance this morning, we saw that on that first vault. It was so uncharacteristic, even on TV. She scored a 13, which normally she'd be like 15 plus. Like, she probably hasn't seen a 13 on a vault since she was, in Junior Olympics. And quite honestly, when I watched it, to see her sort of break form in midair like that, and you could see her head kind of turn to the right, like she came out of the turn. The fact that she still landed on her feet probably speaks to her incredible athleticism. And for her, probably made her realize, in that instance, I'm lucky I didn't land on my back, flat on my back, or hitting my neck, or the things that are associated with catastrophic injury in gymnastics. So, I imagine that moment set her back even more. And again, we saw some hints of this if you were, in the preliminary rounds, when you're kind of setting up which athletes are going to be competing in the final and which teams are advancing to the team final. Even though she scored in the highest in all the events for the U.S. and for the world, the U.S. team finished second, and her scores were lower than normal. She had steps on her floor routine, which you rarely see, and she had a big step on her vault. So I think there were some indications she posted to Instagram between the two prelim and final that the weight of the world was on her shoulders. And I just think we've seen a lot catching up to her. And just to kind of remind people, like, the USA gymnastics has been through an awful lot since the last Olympic cycle, through the scandal that involved their team doctor and sexual abuse. And Simone Biles was the only athlete still on the team from the one in Rio, and the only one who was abused by that doctor, who is still on the team and has spoken also of feeling, very much the weight of sort of carrying and representing that group of athletes. So I just do think she really did have a lot on her shoulders. And I'm sure people could say, why didn't she do this sooner? Maybe there would have been another athlete in her place. I can't answer that for her, except to say that I'm sure she thought she could get through it and just realized today she could not.
Yeah. So an extraordinary development. And again, like, she gave up a lot today, because this was her shot at history. She had 5 chances to win gold, and if she'd managed all 5, then she would, I guess, sail off into the sunset as the greatest female Olympian of all time with 10 goals. So now that's gone. That's beyond her. She can equal the record, but the record is what she gave up today. And I was reading as well, at the US Olympic trials in June, she left in tears apparently. She was disappointed with her performance then. So there's probably, as you said, a lot going on, and she did make reference today as well to feeling like she's doing this for other people increasingly. So we'll hear more, I'm sure, over the coming days, and hopefully we see her in action on Thursday. Geez, if everybody wasn't watching today, Tara, everybody's going to be watching on Thursday. Yeah.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, and as she said, it's sort of a day-by-day thing, and whether she goes back into the warm-ups, you know, and sees where she's at. And, you know, I just hope for her that she's comfortable with what she decides. I hope for the rest of the team that they still feel united and supportive of each other. And I hope that she just, you know, like as I wrote already, you know, I just think bravo to her for taking care of herself when she has to, even when it's really, really hard to, because I cannot imagine making that decision on this stage, on the Olympic stage. That must have just been really, really difficult to do.
Yeah, no, amazing. She's exercising self-care in real time, and she's given up a lot to do it, so kudos to her on that front. A few other American stories to ask you about then. Katie Ledecky is queen of the pool, and she was beaten by Ariane Titmus, the Australian, in the 400 metres freestyle. Now, again, because she's competing on so many fronts, she did cruise into the 1500 metre final, and she was also first in her 200 metre freestyle heat as well. So the 1500 is a new event for women at the Olympics. Ledecky's the world record holder. She's really expected to win there. Yeah. I've seen the 400 metre loss described to Titmus as maybe slight surprise, like there's no crisis here on Ledecky's part, I don't think.
No crisis at all. I mean, I think Titmus had posted the better scores, and you know what Ledecky had was her own Olympic history at her back. You know, she had her own experience, and that sort of confidence boost that she would get on that stage. But I thought that was a tremendous race. Ledecky, that was the second fastest time of her own career in that race, second only to her own world record. And we really haven't seen a lot of records falling in Tokyo, which tells me, you know what I mean, like that it's not a fast pool, if you will. So I thought Ledecky was a wonderful competitor in defeat. She, you know, credited Titmus for, you know, they make each other better. And I thought it was a tremendous race. I thought it was a great race, one of the most compelling I've watched. So I'll be watching Ledecky again, you know, throughout, because I do think that 1500, I can't even imagine swimming for that long. I'm lucky to make a lap. So that's an event too that I'm interested in seeing. But I don't think there was any there might have been slight disappointment, but no great shock and no great shame or anything with Ledecky taking that silver medal. Yeah,
she took 4 goals in Rio and 1 silver as well. By the way, on the 1500 metre point, so I was reading quotes from Brett Hawke, who represented Australia at the 2000 and 2004 Olympics, and he was just making the point of Ledecky. And again, it's probably something that we all don't appreciate when we're not watching the sport day in, day out. He said it's highly unusual that a swimmer has the kind of range that she has. You need different attributes to swim those different events. Most people don't master the different strokes that you need for different ranges, and there are different energy systems that those strokes require. He said this is like having a track athlete who can run the 100 metres all the way up to 1500. It's just unheard of. So Ledecky's
so interesting,
a freak.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and Michael Phelps has been on TV here in America, you know, the greatest American swimmer, and saying much the same thing, that she's able to sprint out and go hard at the start of a race, but then she also, you know, so she has like a sprinter's mentality or ability there, but then also this ridiculous endurance. So, yeah, she remains certainly one of the bright spots and one of the more compelling U.S. athletes for the rest of these games, the swimming portion for sure.
Yeah, I was reading a piece as well. I don't know how true this is really. It was wondering, was the U.S. dominance in the pool potentially over? Phelps is obviously gone, and from Rio you have lost Ryan Lochte. I mean, the drama, the fun of Ryan Lochte gone. I mean, that's a sad thing for us all. Ryan Lochte, Matt Grievers, Nathan Adrian, they have 15 Olympic gold medals between them, and they failed to qualify. So that either means there's an obscene bunch, you know, who've taken their place, or maybe US swimming is on a bit of a brief downward curve. I'm not sure which it is yet.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I think that's a cycle of life question regardless. And I think, you know, the Caleb Dressels of the world and just, gosh, her name is just popping out of my head, but the young woman from Alaska who won last night.
Oh, Jacoby, 17.
Yes. So like, to me, I'll tell you what, I will say this, and this is just, I don't want to sound jingoistic or like too, rah-rah USA, but the Olympic trial events in the U.S. for both track and field and for swimming are oftentimes harder, to get to those spots than it is to get to win at the Olympics. There is so much depth at some of the trials meets here that, quite honestly, there are probably swimmers in America who could contend for medals if there was a slot for them on the. It's all about how you swim that day, and I think that's a big part of what we're seeing. There might not be a Michael Phelps who's contending for a medal in 8 different events, but I think there is still a lot of depth. And like I said, Caleb Dressel is certainly somebody who's ready to kind of step in, and even the Lily Kings of the world. So we'll see. But I feel like that happens. I'm sure Australia, they're probably saying something similar, and then somebody pops up. It does tend to go in some cycles.
No, you guys are obscene in the pool, actually, because I hadn't fully appreciated it. So in 2016, there were 35 medals available to US athletes, 35 medals available. USA claimed 33 of them, and 16 of those were gold. So you're kind of taking the mick a little bit, is the saying we'd have over here in Ireland. And then in 2012, you had 31 medals. So you had 31 medals, 35. I'm not feeling sorry for you, whatever you come in
Not
with.
a bit, no. It's an enormous system here between the USA system and then the big-time college. Even many swimmers from other countries compete in the U.S. college circuit, because that whole, that element of swimming is really enormously popular over here as well. So, you could get 5 guys from Stanford that have all been swimming together and then all make the Olympic team. No tears needed for the U.S. Trust me. No. I hear you.
Before you go, Team USA in the basketball. This is interesting. I mean, look, there's always razzmatazz here and interest, and it's just, there's kind of a novel quality to watching Team USA do their thing. Greg Popovich is coach, Steve Kerr's alongside him, and then lost to France to kick things off. And I know there were a couple of exhibition matches that didn't go so well in advance of the games as well. Iran Wednesday, Czech Republic to follow, win both of those, and it's all fine, and USA are in the knockout stages. The question I had, Tara, well, aside from, is there something more serious wrong here? And please feel free to give us your take on that. So, the names missing, like LeBron, Steph Curry, James Harden, Anthony Davies, James Kawhi, Irving's missing, on it goes Jimmy Butler's missing. Have these just said, oh no, I'm too tired to go to the Olympics, or I'm not interested, or were they not picked? What's the deal with all the big names missing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety there. Some just pull themselves out of consideration, like LeBron, citing exhaustion, age, time, commitment, whatever it might be, the travel, the virus, who knows this year. Others could be rehab. The NBA season only finished, the playoffs, because, again, with different schedules, only finished within the week before the Olympics. So for some people, that made it impossible. For others, you're nursing injuries that may have occurred during the season because it is so close. And again, you're looking at, it's such an interesting thing, because in the U.S. we have every major individual NBA star, but now you're trying to throw them together to make an NBA team. And you've seen how that can be difficult. The best teams are the ones that have played together for a while, and it's not always a matter of just throwing a group of stars together. And, that's been the difference and the challenge ever since, switching out of the college model, the quote unquote amateur model, to the professional model. And it's something, and then in the meantime, you look at the rest of the world has caught up in basketball. I mean, the rest of the world has produced some of the best basketball players in the world and in the country, and that play in the NBA. So not a great start for the U.S. But again, I don't think anybody's crying any tears, because, that's just the way it goes. They didn't play well enough to win, and they only had, if you will, themselves to blame.
Yeah. Well, listen, you hang in there. It's been a lukewarm start for USA. Just the 24 medals. I know it's tough.
Track and field is still coming, though.
Yeah, just stick with it. Stick with it. Just take the misery.
We'll keep trying. We'll keep chugging away. But go Ireland. And I don't know, I saw a good win by women's hockey, and I saw a swimmer in there last night. So rugby, I hope, is a good sport over there, right? So we'll be rooting for Ireland in my second country. Okay, we appreciate that. Our rugby men's team were swiftly knocked out. But listen, we're doing our best. We're doing our best. Watch the boxers. They're going to come good. All right, okay. I will indeed. Tara Sullivan of the Boston Globe. Thanks, Tara. Cheers for that.